How many heard of Pacific Justice Institute before? Raise your hand. Awesome. How many of you guys listened to the radio show, the Dacus report? Raise your hand. This guy is so good. He is, all right, it's obvious it's mine. Okay. Anyway, we at Pacific Justice Institute, by God's grace, have been actively involved. We handle more case matters, I believe, by God's grace on the West Coast, defending faith, family, and freedom than any other legal organization of our kind. And it's been exciting. We have 5 offices in California, 2 in Northern, 3 in Southern, and we work really diligently to defend the rights of parents and religious freedom. So last year alone, we handled several thousand requests for assistance, all without charge. Now, that's a real miracle. Whenever you see an attorney and volunteer in the same sentence, I mean, that's really impressive. So anyway, so we're here to serve you. And you know, one of my mottos in life is don't get angry, just call us and pray, and we'll be happy to do what we can do. When we look at these issues, I'm going to be honest with you, the Common Core doesn't really take me that much by surprise. It doesn't really broadside me like I know many of you it has. And the reason is because I've actually dealt with this before. It was about a decade and a half ago or 15 years ago when we had something called the class test. How many of you guys remember the class test? CLA? Okay, well, a number of you do. This was a test, a new standardized test that was going to revolutionize the assessment system in education. And the test, it had touchy-feely questions where it had a picture of someone's head and it was pretending it's your head. And you had to write down words reflecting, describing your feelings. Okay? And this was very intrusive into the privacy of families and the kinds of questions. And parents rightfully had a serious objection to it. So what happened? Well, we had a stealth individual who will remain stealth, and they gave us copies of this test. And so we went into court, 4 different county superior courts in California. And in all 4, the judges granted preliminary injunctions on the rights of parents to opt their kids out because it was not just academic. It broke the trust of parents that they have with academics and teachers and school districts. Excuse me, not teachers, with education, public education. Because many of the teachers had serious concerns as well. In fact, I was in, I think it was Fresno County Superior Court, and the attorney representing the California Department of Education was there and representing the state, and the judge says, well, I see here some copies of some of the parts of the test. I want to have all of it, and I want you to provide that to me. And the attorney says, well, no, Your Honor, you can't have that. Seriously, only the Department of Education and the state superintendent can look at that test. You can't look at it, Your Honor. And that judge had lots of gray. And I love gray. Because there's just a bench, not just because I'm getting more, but because there's an element of sensibility, you know. And he said, really? He says, I'm ordering you to give me copies of those tests. And I didn't say much. I didn't have to. And the injunctions came down. Now, what happened then? Parents got informed and massively started opting their kids out of the assessment test. The class test, after just that 1 year, was done. It did not have enough participants to be statistically relevant and relied upon. It was finished. And we have the Stafford 9 came in its place, which was back to academics, which is what we as parents, I as a parent, expect from education. Whether you have your children in public education or not, it's simply what you expect. And so that's one reason why I'm not totally shocked. We've been there before. What makes us different is this is on a federal level. This is hitting all 50 states, at least, well, some exception there. We got some level heads in Alaska, Texas, and I think Minnesota and Virginia and Nebraska or Indiana soon. Yeah. So it's spreading. No, not Alaska? Oh. Right, okay, gotcha. Okay, very good, thank you. So appreciate that, thanks, Greg. So bottom line is it's national, and that's why it's a serious concern. And it's from a federal level, not just on a state level, although states have that discretion. Another reason this doesn't take me by surprise, because I've already seen shocking developments in public schools here in California. We have a revamping of all of the textbooks with regards to literature and with regards to social studies, including history, at all grade levels, where you're going to have role models of lifestyles and orientations that many of you would not want your child to be exposed to, dealing with based on sexual orientation and transgender status, these kind of role models throughout history at all grade levels in our textbooks. Some of you may think that's fine, but from a parent's rights perspective, which is what I want us to focus on, there's a serious problem with education, I believe, crossing those lines. And then we have, on a local level, we have Redwood Heights Elementary, for example, in Oakland, where the California Teachers Association funded a grant where transgendered individuals came into kindergarten and first grade and put on a presentation telling the kids you can be a boy on the outside but be a girl on the inside, and that's okay. You can be a boy, a girl, both, or neither, end quote. Kindergarten, first grade, funded by the CTA. Now, some of you may like your CTA, but I'm just telling you, this is why it's not an isolated, this is a part of some of the objection. Then we had, of course, the recent AB 1266. You guys know about that. That's the locker room, boys going to girls' bathrooms, locker rooms, and showers. Now, they may be, mind you, there may be kids who have, I'm sure there are kids who have gender identity dysphoria. It's a real mental condition. It's not a biological thing. It's a mental condition. And they need to give love and consideration, but it's an egregious violation of privacy and the trust of parents. Irrespective of your perspective on that issue, that cannot be ignored. Well, that issue of privacy is what we're dealing with now with regard to Common Core. Let me tell you why. The testing, the assessment testing, we have serious concerns that it will be delving into potential issues of family privacy. And families, in terms of the questions and the kind of feeling kind of approach, that's of serious concern, and parents need to be aware of what they can do with regards to that. One is utilizing an opt-out form. California, we have California Common Core Data Opt-out Form. This basically puts on notice your right to opt your child out of state assessment tests. You have a right to do that. Unqualifiedly, you have a right to opt your child out of assessment tests, state assessment tests, period. One thing I recommend for school districts to do is to educate, and you can actually put that information out to parents and say, you have a right to opt your child out of state assessment tests, and to notify the school accordingly. And so this deals with, it says, please take notice that pursuant to California Education Code Section 51513, 60615, 60615, and 20 U.S.C. Section 1232H, my child is to be exempt and excused from the following activities. And then it lists them. And also deals not only with the assessment test, but also administration of any test, questionnaire, survey, examination, or evaluation containing any questions or items relative to my child or my personal beliefs or practices in with regard to sex, family life, morality, religion. Also deals with mental, psychological problem questioning, political affiliations, illegal, antisocial, self-incrimination or demeaning behavior, income, religious practice, affiliation, beliefs. You can tell we covered our bases here. So that's here, and that's made available for just $19.95. I'm just teasing. No, I won't do that to you. Actually, a real attorney wouldn't say $19.95. That would be an insult. No, $995. But anyway, that's available on our website at pacificjustice.org or pji.org. Okay. Another one that we have is dealing with the privacy of biometric data. This is dealing with specifically parents, a number of issues, including it's called Notice Reasonable Expectation of Privacy, and it protects and defends your right to have your child, for example, not to have their privacy violated in situations like in the locker room or the bathroom, saying basically your child's privacy shall be protected. They don't have to dress and unchange and shower in front of the opposite biological sex. I don't know, maybe I'm just old-fashioned. No, anyway, I'm being facetious. So that's on here. It's really easy to check. But also we have a segment on here called biometric data. And it says specifically our reasonable expectations of privacy include our child's biometric data of any kind will not be collected without written consent. Such biometric data includes, but is not limited to, fingerprints, DNA, retinal iris scans, computerized face recognition, non-emergency pulse measurements, and any other such data that is recorded and stored electronically. This assertion of our child's privacy data or rights inheres regardless of whether such biometric data is requested or demanded by federal, state, district, or school site officials. Now you're saying, wait a minute, this is awfully radical. Aren't you being a little hyper? Are you saying, I know, I'm not saying this stuff is all going on now. You know, don't let them stare at you in the eye, they'll gather your retina. No, I'm not saying that. But what I am saying, though, is we have to be forward-looking and forward-protecting, and that's all we're doing here. That's what attorneys do, is we try to be forward-looking, not after the fact. So this is, I think, is a very helpful tool as well. You can download that from our website, pacificjustice.org. Now, why is this important, privacy? Well, one thing is the fact that on a state level, it's illegal under state law in California for the state to provide private, as far as academic tested information pursuant to your child directly to the federal government. Now, as I understand, it's going through a third-party force. There's a third-party entity. They're given a code number for your child's name, and then from then it goes to the federal government. I have serious concerns with regards to, practically speaking, how legitimate that is actually going to be to protect the child's individual identity. And I think that's very important for many families and parents. It's so important we made a state law based on it, okay? But that's something we're watching. If that's breached, we can move in and file a lawsuit and challenge that purely on state statutory grounds. Second is the fact that if this material violates family privacy and the privacy of your child, there's a serious threat with regard to the correlative effect of social workers using that information to start going on a fish hunt. And a fishing expedition, and starting to investigate. That was one of the problems we had with the class test. There was a direct correlative relationship there. Not trying to create hype and fear here, just it's a reality. And that's why privacy is so important, okay, in that regard. So that's one thing, opt-out forms you can use. Number two is, things that you can do is model policies. Work with your school board members to look to the model policies that you can change irrespective of Common Core. For example, excusal of confidential medical services. That's a real basic, okay? No child, in my opinion, without exception of medical emergency, should be able to leave school to have an abortion or contraceptives without parental consent, or at least parents signing off on it. Most school districts have that as their policy. They allow that to happen. We at Pacific Justice Institute have gone head-to-head with 6 school districts, and the ACLU was on the other side threatening to sue if they changed. We convinced all 6 to change to our policy, saying no child shall be allowed to leave school except in medical emergencies without parental consent. So that's something you can do. That's a positive, because I like when people have energy. I like them to use it in a positive way. If you want to look at those model policies, you can get a copy of our book called Reclaim Your School. Now, it's available without charge. You can have free download from our website, pacificjustice.org. We were on our 4th printing. I said, forget it, free download. We're losing money anyway. Make it available free. So anyway, but so that's available, and those have a whole chapter for school board members on about 21 model policies. You may like some, you may not like others. Take a look and use it as you wish, and we can help you as well. Next is encouraging the adoption of higher standards. Of actual higher standards. You can do that. And a Colorado superintendent in Colorado, I cannot recall her name, but she is taking this Common Core material and she is actually upping the ante, upping the standards for her school districts. And I think that's something that should be entertained. Despite the negativity of doing so. Okay, who's with the NSA? I want to know. All right, anyway, I didn't burn my bulletproof vest, so anyway. No, I don't believe in that stuff. Okay. But the point is, I think in the end, the measurement's going to be the assessment tests. And if a school district shows exceedingly high scores on these tests, that is, at the end of the day, the issue. And I don't think a school district would have a great case defending themselves by if they raise the standards by showing superior scores on those assessment tests. That's my opinion, but that's still, we have to see. Next is promote alternatives and look into alternatives. But just remember, private schools, folks, I'll be honest with you, most private schools are shifting to Common Core. And they often will say, well, you're just using part of it. Well, technically, legally speaking, they really can't. They may be doing that, but that's a concern. And should they do some Common Core? Well, the SAT test is being converted, parallel with Common Core. So our kids, I think, in private schools will need to have some acclimation to the type of questions and type of questioning. But for the sake of quality of education, there's a serious concern of private schools completely dumbing down to that lower level, particularly when, as was mentioned, in junior high and high school, which is real important. And then also you have homeschooling. Same situation with homeschooling. I love homeschooling, but nonetheless, homeschoolers need to be aware. The standardized testing, the SAT, is coming down, and that's going to be something that you're going to have to deal with. There's going to need to be a prepping, if you will, for your children for that kind of test taking, that kind of information. But I still believe that homeschoolers will continue to score 2 grade levels above public schools. I don't know. I'm just a little biased. I think that's going to happen. It's really, really tough to homeschool. That's my qualifier right there. What about exercising your rights to review materials? You can do that. As a parent, as an individual, you can go and review all the curriculum and book materials to be utilized by your school in the coming school year. You're entitled to do that. That's your right. If your school district gives you a problem with that, or they say, oh yeah, you can do that, no problem, between 1 and 2 o'clock while you're at work, that's not reasonable. It has to be reasonable. And we can work with you. We've defended parents to be able to do that. In addition, you can form what's called a parental review committee. Now, we did something like this in Santa Rosa after their school district did something very vulgar with regards to a talent show. I'm not even going to talk about what it was. It was really sick. And we've, Pacific Justice, raised our sword, and we're filing a lawsuit. And at the same time, Eagle Forum, who we were working with, it's an organization I have tremendous respect for and admiration for. You can clap if you want. That's all right. Anyway, yay. They worked on the other side, and together we as a part of the settlement, if you will, was worked out a parental review committee where they reviewed the curriculum, the materials, the information going into books, textbooks, and the usage of it. And that's something that can be done on a local level. Any school board can create a parental review committee, and we can give you some of the criteria and assistance on that if you want. Feel free to contact us. But I think that's something that's real important. And then you also have the fact that you can get involved in making a difference. A good friend of mine, attorney friend of mine, Greg Brittany, who's here in the front, he reminded me of something that I think is worth mentioning, and that is Justice Brandeis once said, the most important public office is that of a citizen. And I think it's a very important quote. So getting involved and remembering that at the end of the day, what happens in Sacramento can change tremendous and have a tremendous impact. And we can be like other states that have said, no, we don't want Common Core. It's not a federal mandate. States have that authority to decide differently. And I strongly encourage you to consider that. Are there some good things about Common Core? I love the concept of applied mathematics. I really would have appreciated knowing what a coefficient, how that cosine thing actually worked in some practical way, okay? But we don't have to have Common Core to have applied mathematics. And then second, when we talk about the shifting from classic literature to just informational writings and readings, that we have a real problem with that because that's dealing with controversial issues. We've already had one student who acknowledged that the 2 readings he had, one was the anti-nuclear power, the other was against oil fracking. And there wasn't anything on the other side, you know, giving Exxon's perspective, you know. So I think that despite your position on the issue, there's nothing to ensure balancing a viewpoint. And that's seriously important because sometimes, not always, but sometimes teachers' unions and some of these organizations can have a viewpoint that is different than mine. And there's nothing really to ensure that there's going to be a balance there. So I have a serious concern that we are going to see a major taking advantage through this kind of a massive control of education in terms of the indoctrination and a viewpoint that you don't have when you stick with classic literature and true critical thinking, as was so well described earlier. So those are some points to take into consideration. Finally, let me just say this. If you haven't done so already, we've passed out some sign-up sheets for Pacific Justice Institute. Finally, I want to say is stay alert and be aware of what's going on. We love to do that. If you've got, wave those white sheets so everyone knows what I'm talking about. Okay, all you guys, who didn't get one, raise your hand. Okay, some people over here. It's a little white sheet. If you guys could be so kind and gracious, please to pass those out. And then to fill those out, and to feel free just to give them to me or to put them on that desk right over one of those tables so we can keep you updated. We maintain your privacy. By the way, we don't rent out our mailing list, and we only usually send one a month, and it's very reasonably short. I have a lot of relatives in Bakersfield, so we have a rule, WWGD. What would Grandma do if she opened up this letter? So that's our standard to maintain your trust. So if you could fill those out, we'd love to keep you updated. And finally, just remember this. God has not given us, folks, a spirit of fear, but of power, love, and discipline, or a sound mind. And that's all I'm asking tonight. That's all we want to do, the other speakers tonight, is for you to do, is to not be compelled out of fear, because that's destructive. It can be very short-term effectively, but long-term it really doesn't lead to the kind of results we want. But rather act out of love and the power and sound mind and discipline that God, by His grace, gives us to do. And remember that in the whole scheme of things, and I think we have the possibility to make tremendous project. We saw the class tests go down in flames. I think state by state, as the evidence comes forth, we can do the same. God bless you.